Hello and welcome to Waffle of the World Cup. This is our final edition for this podcast companion for the team here at Dib Digital. You've got myself, Apps, here, and I'm joined by the one, the only, Mr. Logan. How's it going?
The finale!
It is the finale. Slog it's been.
Hasn't been that bad.
No, it's been nice not to talk about games
Fucking
for a while.
shit games. Getting annoyed about them. Getting annoyed about something else instead.
Yeah, exactly. Just find somewhere else to outlet this rage. We're going to cover off the final between France and Croatia. We're going to touch upon the third place playoff between England and Belgium. Talk about the awards. Talk about the World Cup in general. A bit of VAR. It reared its head again in the final, even though it had a bit of a quiet one. And then we're going to top off nicely with a real England evaluation of what actually occurred during this World Cup and whether we felt actually it's all been a bit overhyped or was we happy with what Gareth and the boys delivered. But let's start with the final that was on Sunday. France v Croatia. Croatia, a team that you had backed as dark horses in the very first podcast.
Yep.
Continuously written France off because of my sweepstake interests. In the end, France, you look at that scoreline of 4-2 and you think, well, that's routine, isn't it? But actually, I think if you watch that first half and parts of that second half, it was anything but at times.
Yeah. The thing is, Gary Neville made a point. He said, France were in control without having any possession. I kind of, to a certain extent, agree with that. But Croatia looked like a real threat. They didn't look blunt or anything. But I think the extra quality from France in the end sort of told. And I'm surprised I haven't seen anyone criticising that keeper of theirs in that Croatian goal. I can't believe it. But I think you could definitely say that it wasn't as crushing a defeat as the scoreline suggests.
No, I mean they were playing well in the first half. Croatia, like you said, they looked a threat and got unlucky with the Mandzukic own goal, kicking things off because Griezmann blatantly dived to get that free kick for one. And then B, when you just clip it in the box like that, you don't expect your centre forward to be backwards header in that. And putting it over the keeper and in. So that was a bit of a sour taste. But they rallied, and then 10 minutes later, Perisic has scored another good goal from him. Actually, it was a great strike. Actually, nice first touch, and then he fucking thunderbolted it into that bottom corner, and Hugo was left staring at it, going, "Well."
At least it was his far post this time.
Yeah. So at that point, it's 1-1. You think, well, they're going to go in level, and they've had some good play. Croatia, they've done pretty well, and then corner comes in. There is a hint of a handball from a Croatian defender who's escaping. It might have even been Perisic again. It probably wasn't. And referee waves it away, gets a little word in his ear, says, "John, have another look." He has a look at it, awards a penalty. And we haven't spoken about VAR in the last couple of episodes because it hasn't really been a factor. It's sort of gone a bit sleepy. But at that point, I thought that is an awful decision from the referee. I don't know what you think about that decision of him, overturning his own original decision and giving the penalty, because it seemed a bit... There's nothing deliberate about that in my eyes.
Yeah, but then you've also got to look at, is that hand in a natural position? I don't know. I can see why he's given it, but if you ain't seen that first time round, and when you watch things in slow motion, they always look worse.
It looks like he's moved his hand down, but if you know by jumping, your hand will go up naturally. As you fall down, your arms come back down. So,
I don't think he's given that for deliberate handball. I think he's given that for his arm being in an unnatural position. But I don't know. I think it's... You could consider it harsh, but don't be getting your hands involved, and it ain't happening. That's the ultimate rule. If fans get involved, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, I think they need to sort this. Either give everything, literally everything that's your hand, and then there's no argument, or stop giving these took ones. Because that was an awful decision. Especially the fact that he look at it again and then went, actually, yep.
This is where the VAR needs fine tuning, because it's for any clear and obvious error, right? When you're looking at that, it's not clear and obvious that the referee's made a mistake. So, I don't know. the thing is, it's not a bad thing if he doesn't see something, that then he looks back and he goes, I've really fucked that up. But he's obviously made a decision real time, either not seen that handball as he classed it, or he didn't deem it bad enough, if you like, or deliberate enough, or that his arm was in an okay position. And then he's gone back to look at it and obviously completely revised his decision. But you could argue that he's puffed that. Like, the pressure's got to him and he's just gone, I'd rather give it than not, rather than be criticised afterwards. And that's the trouble, isn't it? Some people would rather do something than get accused of doing nothing. It's like, I don't know. I can see why he's given that, but I don't think it's correct.
No, I don't think it's correct at all. I don't get it. I don't get the unnatural or the deliberate part of that. And I think you're right. Maybe he just thought, well, now I've had a look at this for so long, I better come out and give something, at least a corner, because he's got to give a goal kick for that. So he got that bit wrong already struggling, and then just crumbled and gave it, and that really would have sunk Croatia a little bit, because not only do they feel a little bit screwed over by it, but they had worked very hard in that first half, and to come out 2-1 down, they must have gone into that dressing room thinking, what the fuck's happening here? What sort of garbage is this?
I still don't understand why we don't have a man behind the goal line. I mean, it baffles me. Just having someone there with an opinion, having a butcher's that can see what's going on. And if you want to, use VAR, but then you can go, hey, Alan, did you see anything there? Was there a handball? He went, ooh, maybe. And then he goes, right, rather than just fucking being left blind, because them linos are useless in that situation. They ain't seeing anything from there.
No, they can't see fuck all.
Just for the sake...
They have in that Europa, didn't they? And I think the Champions League, there's always an extra official that's lurking.
Get them there.
I've not seen them do anything though. Just they've got that weird little stick, and they just sort of stand there and don't be. I don't ever remember them actually doing anything. And stuff has happened right under their noses, and they've just gone.
They're not asking them.
I'm not overruling that. He just lets it run, even though he's a yard away from it. But
stop puffing it.
Yeah, I need to learn and just stick with these original decisions, but. It didn't matter in the end because Pogba and Mbappe, 2 quick fire goals in the second half, sent them 4-1 up, and at that point, that was the killer blow, really. The Pogba goal would have been bad enough, but then when Mbappe somehow got a goal in from 25 yards, there's no road back for Croatia at that point, is there?
Well, you would have thought not. I actually still think Croatia carried on playing quite well. They've got this knack about on Croatia, not really getting that rustled. They just crack on, keep doing what they've been doing, and seeing what they can get. And I actually quite liked and enjoyed watching Croatia. I think they played really well throughout the tournament. Yeah,
no, they certainly did. They had their games. They wasn't great against Russia or Denmark, but decided that in the semis they'd go, right, let's turn that screw on Gareth and the boys. You mentioned that the keeper may have done better perhaps in some of these goals. I mean, I'm assuming you're alluding to the Mbappe goal and perhaps the Pogba one, but the Mbappe one certainly just sort of hit it and weren't much pace on it. It didn't go in the corner and he just sort of laid down and let it go past him. And I thought, well, that's not really good enough, is it?
I've seen him a few times this World Cup. He seems to be one of these keepers that just goes, like he seems to write himself off getting there before anything really even happens. And he gets a lot of credit for his penalty saves in this World Cup, but there's even that Trippier goal that we scored. I thought, well, I mean, there's an argument he could be getting to that. That wasn't in a corner. And then I thought the Pogba goal, he sort of, all right, he was wrong-footed a bit, but it was very, he just gave up. He went, no, I'm not, like, not, and it wasn't in the corner, and it wasn't like, it was sort of relatively high, but it would have been comfortable. And I saw that, and then especially that Mbappe one, again, he just sort of, just didn't. I'm just like, get there. What's wrong with you? Make an effort. So I don't know. I don't even know who he plays for, and that tells you something. Because normally I'm pretty clued up. Football Manager teaches me these things, but there's a couple of times in that World Cup when I've watched him and gone, right,
who are
you actually? Who are you? And are you actually any good? You could probably argue that Croatian side is only a few players away from being somewhere near it, and I don't know. I just think that it's frustrating for them, because I think they could probably do better if they just had that little bit of quality. And you'll be surprised to know that Subasic is the keeper for Monaco.
Yeah. So that's what he's getting out of life. Playing that French league, like we said.
Yeah, it can't be trusted, that French league. Get Mbappe out of there so we can actually see him in a proper league.
Yeah, he has scored a goal for Monaco, so just keep that in mind that he can be getting them goals if you need him to. One career league goal. I don't know how that's occurred, in all honesty, but that's what this website's telling me. So I'll take that over my own lack of knowledge. It's pretty much all over at 4-1, but then for whatever reason, Hugo thinks, you know what I'll try and do here? I'll try and take Mandzukic on, and he caresses it, doesn't he? He really does blow that and lets a little crack of the door come open. But is that something that Hugo's doing often with his feet, or has he just got complacent there and just fucked it up, basically?
I don't be trusting him. He doesn't get caught out like that, like literally the ball at his feet trying to dribble it. I've never seen him do that before. But there's times when he will come out or do something and it makes me heart go a little bit. But as I say, I always criticise him because he's got that near post blunder in him, and he gets complacent there. But it's like, it was weird. When you watch the replay of that, it's like he doesn't even see him out of the corner of his left eye until really late, and then tries to dribble it round him. And it's just like, what? I don't know what you're doing there, Hugo. I literally cannot. There must be an element of complacency there, because if that's 1-0 or something, he's just going to whack that. He ain't even going to be dealing with it. So yeah, he is liable to a little bit of eccentric goalkeeping, but not like that generally.
No, it seemed a bit out of character, that one, but ultimately it didn't matter, and France were worthy winners at 4-2, Croatia runners up. So good news for France, good news for me. Had them in the sweepstake. If England weren't going to win it, then it's always going to be France for me. France overall deserve winners from the tournament.
I think you'd have to say so.
There's a list of players that didn't go, and you think they could have cobbled together another squad out of that would have been very threatening.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, definitely.
We'll come on to maybe the lack of depth of England later, but France have got oodles of it.
They have got an unbelievably talented. I mean, you could probably make a second squad, and I reckon you could probably even get a reasonable third squad, I think. I mean, I'm thinking about players like Ben Arfa, who probably would be near a second, but would still get in and you just go, well, it's just a joke. And don't forget, they've got players like Benzema they didn't take. There's so many French. It's just a joke, honestly. They have got fantastic depth. But I mean, when you look across that squad, I mean, Hugo Lloris, despite his horrific error in the finals, made some great saves this tournament. I think he's been brilliant for them. They've had a very solid defence. They've looked pretty good. A little bit suspect from set pieces, but generally pretty unflappable. I'd probably argue they've got the best midfield in the tournament. I don't think it gets much better than Pogba, Matuidi and Kante. I think that's about as good as it gets. And then that front line of Giroud, Mbappe and Griezmann is, again, up there with anyone's in the tournaments probably. So across the board, they're really strong, and they've got players to come on and change games. It's amazing, really. They should dominate world football, really, for the next 2 or 3 tournaments, you would have thought. But with the squad and the young players they've got, and Mbappe are getting better, they're going to be the favourites, I think. Oh, yeah,
absolutely. They absolutely will be. And Giroud, they managed to win that World Cup without him registering a single shot on target. So,
I mean, that tells you something. I mean, imagine if they had Harry Kane up there.
Well, we'll come on to them later.
They might have done it at a canter.
They might well have done, but yeah, they look a force to be reckoned with. They're playing, and they've exercised the European Cup final from 2 years ago of losing that, and seen off Croatia, who in the end done very well to get that far, and were a little bit unlucky in some circumstances, but the power and the strength of France kind of shone through towards the latter stages. The Saturday we had the infamous third place playoff game between Belgium and England. England made a few changes, not in the places I would have thought. I was expecting Harry and Trippier to certainly not play, and also I thought Rashford might get a start, but he opted for bringing in Delph and Rose and Phil Jones of all defenders to be starting. Surprised that he's kept Harry on, or do you think he wanted to give Harry that chance to maybe get another goal and get that golden boot wrapped up? Because the main threat was probably Big Rom, who was on the opposite team.
Yeah, I think he did. I think that's why he did start him. again, I said on the last podcast, it'd be interesting to hear if he comes out and says he was struggling with an injury.
Yeah.
But evidently, maybe it's just fatigue. Maybe he's just mentally and physically exhausted from the World Cup. It's hard to say. But yeah, I think the team in general was a bit of an odd team. I think obviously he started Rose out on the left, Trippier on the right. It wasn't a bad lineup by any means. I think when you looked at our midfield, what was it? It was
we had Sterling, Kane, Delph, Loftus-Cheek, Rose, Trippier, Dyer, Maguire, Stones, Jones, Pickford. He brought on Lingard, Rashford, and Ali.
The thing is, it was always much for a muchness. Whoever he rotated in that squad, we just don't have the quality in reserve to make like for like. And Belgium are pretty clear in their intentions. It's just changes need to be made. But I expected him to, as you rightly said, I expected Trent Alexander-Arnold and probably Rashford to start, and they just didn't. So it was kind of a bit of a shock to me, that starting lineup. But I don't know.
Yeah.
If we can't predict it, then I suppose that's good for the opposition in a way. It keeps them guessing. But I think every time I've said or we've predicted changes, it's like he hasn't really done it. And we said coming into the Belgium game in the group stages, no, he'll stick with it. And that's when he made wholesale changes. So it's all a bit odd. But I think it is what it is, really. We knew what our limitations were, and I think by the looks of it, we went with a bit of a more hard-working lineup, should we say.
Yeah, and we got off to a torrid start, conceded after a few minutes, and in fairness, played all right for the majority of the games, a couple of squabbles and whatnot, but there was some nice play. Dyer had one cleared off the line, and Loftus-Cheek looked lively and good, but then the Hazard goal in the back end of the game killed it off after that, because there was about 9 minutes left, so there was no chance of England recovering, and they go out of a loss, unfortunately, and finish fourth in the tournament, and Belgium get that little bronze medal to take home. And that was pretty much sums up the game, really. Not really no point going into it in much more depth, although if they had one, we'd have been here half hour dissecting how brilliant they were. Let's take a look at some of the awards that are handed out by FIFA. Obviously, you got the Golden Boot. Harry clings on to it. 6 goals. Pretty good haul, but if you actually look at the facts of that, the only one from real open play come off the back of his heel. The rest were penos and headers from corners.
They all count. That's what he'd say. They all count. I mean, it's not the perfect, is it? There's no way that you can say it's the best. But then again, in 10 years, 20 years, who's going to look back and go, well, he only scored penalties and headers, and one come off his heel? Hardly anyone is. So
you still got to score those fucking penos as well.
I mean, those penalties, you got to remember, bloody awesome as well. Like, they were unstoppable. So he did what he was asked to do. I think, as I say, he went off the ball. I think he was capable of doing more than he did for whatever reason, whether it was tactical or fatigue, whatever it was. He didn't really, from that Sweden game, or probably the Colombia game, really, at the end of that Colombia game to Sweden game, he didn't look right to me. That wasn't the Harry Kane that you would have seen at Spurs. So that was a bit odd.
Shut off. Luka Modric gets the golden ball, which is the seen as the best player of the tournament. Any complaints about that? He got Eden Hazard second and Griezmann third, which I had to wrench my neck out when I saw this morning. But yeah, so I mean, Luka deserved winner.
I think he's played well in every game. I think he, especially against England, funnily enough, I thought he was absolutely incredible. Typically, but he's such an easy player just to not really appreciate. He's just so completely unflappable on the ball. And he was awesome at Spurs, but since he's gone to Madrid, he's just been excellent. And in a weird kind of way, it was good to see him play again and play to the level he did. I can't look past him. I can't think of many other players that I'd probably be looking to give it to other than Modric. I mean, you could probably argue, maybe someone like Matuidi, I think, has been really good for France. Maybe Pogba. But again, there's a risk you end up giving it to that old bloody France side.
Yeah, that will irritate people. That Kylian Mbappe gets Young Player of the World. I don't think he's any, shocked that that's happened. He really ripped it up during this tournament. And then Courtois got the Golden Glove. for being the leading keeper. So they were the awards that were handed out. Sir Harry gets one for England at least. That's something that he can take home, and I'm sure in years' time he'll be proud of that achievement, because Gary Lineker, the only other to do it. So he's an exclusive club in that sense of the word. World Cup as a whole take place in Russia. Prior to the tournament, there was lots of squabbling and people saying, well, there's going to be all sorts of bother and trouble out there. It's going to be a disaster. They won't be organised. But every team that you see that have been speaking to the media, every pundit that's been out there, they've all said what a fantastic place it was and how well behaved the fans were. Probably because they're fearful of getting the shit kicked out of them by the police, but that's how the police should work, shouldn't it? You should be scared of the police so you don't break the law. So I've got no problem with them being hard-nosed, but in general it seemed like it exceeded a lot of people's expectations. So, to be honest, when they got it, I thought that's a bit of a joke, in all honesty. And then when I saw that stadium with that temporary stand put up, I was like, Jesus Christ. But not a bad word to say about it, according to those that were there and those that have played in it. No.
I mean, not that I would class myself as any kind of Russian expert, but I think Putin gets a lot of bad press from the West, doesn't he? Let's be honest. He's not, everyone says a little while ago, they're talking about being on the edge of World War III. There's obviously been a bit of tension between Trump and Putin. There's been worries about the Russian fans with English fans after what happened in France and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, there's not been one hint of trouble, and then the last bit of trouble that does happen is a pitch invasion in the World Cup final. So, but they were again straight on them, got them off, no fuss, carry on. It seems to me. I mean, all the stadiums to me have looked immaculate. There's been no trouble. All the fans were in amongst each other. There weren't ends or anything that I saw.
No, it's hard to do that, but yeah, it was
surprised
pretty
me
mixed.
Actually. But it was pretty mixed together. You never saw anyone fighting. It's
drinking
been
beer in the stadium.
Yeah. It all seemed to be in great spirits. So, let that be a lesson to people. Don't be shutting them down early doors when they put on a World Cup like that.
No. People will say, the English fans are well behaved, but I'll tell you what it was. Half of those morons were too scared to go out there and cause trouble.
Yeah, they absolutely nuffed it. They absolutely nuffed it, didn't they?
So the usual suspects that go to France or whatever to cause trouble were absolutely terrified to go out there. And guess what? No trouble. Or very little trouble.
There's one thing in this world that is just literally mindless nonsense, is football hooliganism. It's such a load of old shit. So... yeah, it's good to hear that there was no trouble at all and that everyone had a good time. And yeah, it was really pleasing to see, because the World Cup should be, it's a festival of football. It's, the best nations in the world competing for the title. And that's, it should be the centrepiece event. And that's what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to England then, talk about their tournament performance. Because we started this podcast series talking about the recent history of things and just how badly the national team had done in major tournaments, capping it off with that loss to Iceland 2 years ago. And I think if we're putting things into perspective, given that recent history, given that it was a very inexperienced and young squad, the lads have done a cracking job. Do you agree or disagree with that sentiment?
I agree. I think they have. I mean, I certainly feel prouder, and I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how it shapes up in the future, which before I was sort of a bit like, well, it's just more of the same old shit. There ain't no future. So I feel like this World Cup was definitely the beginning rather than, than anything else. I think this was where we started to see what Gareth Southgate wanted to do. And I think, I feel like he's about halfway there, if that. I don't feel like he's entirely... It felt like it was a bit of a part put together sort of jigsaw squad. Do you know what I mean? Where we haven't got an outstanding left back, so Ashley Young was doing a job there. We've got a right back ultimately playing at centre back. We've got a brand new keeper. We've got a centre half that's played hardly at all for City really, or hasn't played as much as we like.
Yeah.
And then going into midfield, I think we're pretty well set there, but I think we were missing. He definitely wanted Lallana, and he definitely wanted Oxlade-Chamberlain, who he couldn't take.
Yeah.
I think he's got us playing at the start. Well, I think he's at the start of getting us to play how he wants. I don't think we're there yet. I still think, as I say, there's a few more players that you'll want to bring in, and I expect that squad now to evolve again before the European Championships. I don't think it'll. I think about a third of that squad won't be there for next time.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. I think I showed you or sent over the ages for the starting lineup against Croatia in the next World Cup. And the oldest person there, unsurprisingly, is Ashley Young at 37, so he's not making a return trip. I doubt he'll be there in 2 years. Right. But outside of that, you've got a 32-year-old Henderson, Walker and Trippier. And you could argue that, I know you hate having players on Football Manager that are 30 or older, but the fact is sometimes you need a little bit of experience in there. All three of those players potentially could still start. The rest of them are all young enough to still be there, so... you'd hope that a lot of that squad gets to stay together if they continue performing for their clubs, and then when they put the national shirt on, carry on where they left off. But one of the things that definitely has happened is this reconnection with the national team and the fans, because not only has it been their best run since 1990, and I hope that Southgate can stop having nightmares about 1996, because he's now led an England team to a World Cup penalty shootout win, their first ever. But I've personally loved the last 4 weeks or 5 weeks or so. It's been brilliant. We were able to at least dream again, which is something we couldn't do for many years, because it was just like, this is toot. It ain't going to go any further. There's no point even thinking about it. We was on a run. The draw had opened up. There was a chance there for them to walk through. But I love all the players. I love all the backroom staff. I love the fact that by hook or by crook, Harry's got the golden ball, or golden boot, sorry. I love the fact that England were able to beat Colombia on penalties. I love the fact that England dispatched Sweden with relative ease. I love the fact that we got to see England in a World Cup semi-final. And I love the fact, most of all, that Jordan Pickford proved me wrong, putting in a stellar performance pretty much all tournament. Yeah. So it was fantastic. And after that Croatia game on that Thursday, I got a little bit emotional about it. I was sitting there at home thinking, it's all over now. And it wasn't really because I was sad at the opportunity or the fact that we weren't going to be in a World Cup final, but I just felt so sorry for Gareth and the lads. Like, I really did feel their pain, and it kind of upset me because it wasn't for a lack of trying on their part. You could see they'd put everything into this tournament, done everything they could. And that's just not happened before. I've not had that before, because... maybe it's that I'm a little bit older now or whatever, but I remember seeing Stevie G crying just after he'd blown his pen against Portugal in 2006, and that didn't get to me. I wasn't interested in Steve's tears, but to see this squad's collective visible hurt and suffering really got to me, and that's an incredible turnaround for where I was 4 to 5 weeks ago before the tournament, and the sort of the willingness and the pride that those players had in representing England eclipsed past squads that I've seen, and it really felt like it meant the world to them. So it was great. It kind of rejuvenated my love for the team and many others across the country, and long may it continue, let's say.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. There's a weird kind of similarity, I think, between England and Tottenham that I've kind of been experiencing. I know that sounds odd, but for so many years, I've got accustomed to this losing mentality, if you like, or expectation of blowing it. And then all of a sudden, in the same way that England got Southgate, Spurs got Pochettino, and all of a sudden he sort of started getting out the older underperforming players and started going, okay, I want players that will work hard, be honest players that want to play for the club and stuff like that. And it's very similar with what Gareth Southgate's done with England. And when as you say, when you see what it means to them and how hard they work for it and everything, and everything they're tweeting and stuff, you feel is genuine, and they genuinely want to be there. It's not sort of like that it's a hassle for them to be called up. Like, I can imagine if some of those players, or all of them players, if they didn't get called up, that would really hurt them. And it's from not necessarily I'm saying that other players didn't want to get called up there, but I think you always felt like it was a distraction from Chelsea versus United or Arsenal against. Do you know what I mean? There was always that. It always felt like there was the bigger focus on the Premier League, and it kind of feels now like that national team might take precedent. And the fact that we're we're actually trying to build up young players to the future in our national team, like players like Loftus-Cheek and co, and Trent Alexander-Arnold, feels a bit more club-like. Do you know what I mean? In that we give them minutes and build them up for the future. And I don't see, players lose form or whatever, but form's temporary, class is permanent, right? So he's going, I know Loftus-Cheek and Alexander have got that talent to be top players. I want them around my squad. So I'm going to keep them in almost regardless of form. I mean, obviously they need to be playing, but I expect to see that the majority of that squad called up, for next month. Is it next month?
No, it's September. That is. So it's just over a couple of months away. Yeah.
So I expect it to be a similar squad, but I think now we'll start looking at players like Ryan Sessegnon. Now they're in the Premier League. I think that he will probably look at that as that's my left hand side. I want him there, and he'll start identifying these players that he wants to bring into that squad for the Euros, and you'll see them bred through. And I think he likes the idea of having this sort of younger, hungrier team. So it'll be interesting. As I say, I'm really interested now. Not that I'm binning off players like Old Ash and whatnot, but and Cahill, but I kind of think let's bring through, the Jamal Lascelles, let's bring through the Ryan Sessegnon and see what they bring to England and see what we can do in 2 years' time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it won't be long before we see him in competitive action again. As I said, September is the start of the UEFA Nations League, which is largely going to replace friendlies at international level. Not all of them, but in general. There's going to be a competitive tournament running until next summer, so that's something certainly to look forward to. I think now the dust has settled on the team and on the performances. I think now we kind of realistically know our place on the international scene. As time goes on, unfortunately, people will say that was the easiest run in the history that England could have had. They blew it against Croatia, and that was a winnable game. But I kind of agree with what Gary Neville said. I think maybe it was after the Colombia game or after the Sweden game, that the fact that this is one of the first times for a long, long time that the squad has overachieved. The expectations were very low. Our divine right to beat teams like Tunisia, Colombia and Sweden are long gone. We've not been operating at a high enough level recently to say that. And I'd say the team of 2 or 4 years ago was Roy in charge, would have drawn against Tunisia, they would have lost against Colombia, and they may have scraped a win against Sweden, but nothing more. So I think that's something to take away, is that those past squads, I think they would have crumbled when that goal went against Colombia, and they would have collapsed and lost in penalties, and then would have been out of the last 16 again with penalty heartache. But he did change a mentality for the English players. Obviously, a lot of them were new, but some of them had been there in the older teams as well. And let's hope they can continue that strong, steel-like mentality when it comes to the pressure moments. And one of the things that stood out for me is after that Croatia game, all the fans that were there in the England side were out there clapping, recognising the effort that the lads had put in, which was great to see, because how many tournaments have we seen before when they've gone off in disgrace or booed off or sulked off? And in this case, I think all the fans out there recognised that in the end, despite being disappointed in not beating Croatia, that overall the tournament had been a success for England.
Yeah, and it is easy to forget where we were a few years ago, just a short few years ago, with largely similar key players that we've got now. And that gives you a kind of impact. The impact that Gareth Southgate's had on this squad and the England team since he's been charged is quite incredible. Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking, I cannot remember a time when an England manager has come in and has been so important in so many ways. And Gareth Southgate as well is such a classy man. Like, he's so you'd never see him say anything that isn't magnanimous or that isn't, respectful or thought out. He won't say anything controversial, which is good. I don't want him to. No. But he seems like he's an intelligent person that knows what he's doing and knows what he wants. He's got this sort of steely determination. He knows how he wants the team to play. It's like dropping Long Chris. He goes, sorry, you're not my sort of player. You're a good defender, but I need you to be able to do this, which I don't think you're good at. If you get better, he hasn't ruled him out, but I don't see him picking him. And it's that sort of, he knows the players he wants and what sort of characters, individuals, all this sort of stuff. And I think it's quite incredible. And I think he could be one of probably our most important England managers if he carries on like he has for the past 30 years. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, and he's done, like I said, he's done a lot, not only on the pitch, but off the pitch. He's transformed the relationship of the traditional media out there. There was a little bit of a rumble after that training sheet got leaked and ended up being bollocks in the end. There's a little bit of but that all swept under the carpet and no one's talking about that now. And then another smart thing that he did, or sanctioned, I should say, I don't think it's obviously not his idea, but the England YouTube channel had daily updates and live streams, and they had the players sit in for half-hour interview sessions where they could directly engage with the fans. They had a YouTuber in there doing the presenting and just reaching a bit more of a trendy, perhaps, or wider or younger audience, getting players to connect with fans at that level, because as we know, the way things are going, the people are streaming rather than watching that telly. So for the youngsters growing up, they're sitting on that YouTube. Yeah, I'm still sitting on that YouTube. I'm too old to be on there. Those youngsters. I am. You rot on there for hours. You think, what have I done here? And there's 80 quid's worth a month for telly out there, and I think, no, YouTube is always something. So to sanction that sort of environment in the team's hotel, I think was another good move, because they mentioned on the last stream that it wouldn't have been possible if Gareth had said no to it, and you kind of think that would Big Sam have allowed that? Probably not. Would Roy have even known what that was? Probably not. And we know Capello wouldn't have allowed that, so there was going to be no opportunity there. I think he's just taken a really pragmatic approach to everything, not just the tactics and the team and the squad, but everything that makes up what an England tournament is, because it is fanfare, it is media, it is a bit of a, there's all sorts going on and off the field, and I think he's found a good balance this tournament, and obviously they'll learn from what did work and didn't work. But he's off the field stuff's been brilliant as well. Little known fact. Adi Boothroyd went out there to with the squad, so he was out there learning off Gareth. He's obviously under 21 manager at present. That's where Gareth had come from, and you kind of think, is that him subtly preparing for a future? So Adi can get a look at what happened with that senior squad. He can take those learnings back to the under 21s, and I really hope that the FA in future, whenever Gareth decides to leave or if something goes wrong and he gets let go, that they look towards what they're building towards in terms of managers in the under 21s. Because it's worked for Gareth. They didn't have the best run, but just being inside the FA setup, I think will make the next manager comfortable. And you see some club managers come in and go to international and they're like fish out of water. I don't know what's going on because they ain't doing nothing for 3 months. They're sitting there watching games going, cool, he looks good. And they go, yep, he's injured now. And they go, cool, that's that tactic gone.
The thing is...
Lots of positives.
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, it's easy to criticise the FA, and the FA have been heavily
They've been shit. They've been shit before.
But when they come out with this plan and they built St George's Park and, they said, we want a way of playing, we want... we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to win the World Cup by 2022, and everyone sort of laughed at them a bit and went, you're off your rocker, aren't you? And it was always going to take a little while to take effect, getting more technical players in, doing all that kind of stuff, but it actually kind of feels like it's all coming together a little bit, which seems weird, the fact that can you imagine Gareth Southgate of going, with Fabio Capello or whatever, when it just wouldn't happen. He'd feel like he was, imposing. But actually, we're trying to make how our, in the same way that under 21 players are still applying their trade, then so's the manager of that team. So the whole thing kind of makes sense. We're trying to get succession planning in, very similar to what Germany did, obviously, when Klinsmann left and then Jogi Löw stepped up. It all sort of seems like the blueprint is there. It's just a case now of us, I think we're going to have the talent, but will we have that actual belief that we can win it? And I think, as I say, this World Cup was the start of that.
Yeah, and if you look further down the pecking order past the under 21s, I mean, we've got an under 20 World Cup winning side, which speaks to, again, the good work that's been going on at that level and other bits and pieces. Okay, not the most competitive, area and tournament to win, but it's something that we haven't done before. So the teams below this senior team, who are very young, are getting some valuable experience. They're winning tournaments. And that's something that you can only say is a good thing, really, when it comes to them hopefully one day getting promoted and getting into the senior squad. It was interesting you sent me that little picture earlier of where the under-21s have been. Was it under-21s where they've been playing and what clubs they were at?
No, that was the under-19s.
Under-19s.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, like you said, were, not top-ranked Premier League sides. Most of them were Championship sides or smaller Premier League sides. And that's perhaps a little bit of a worry. But I guess, you're under-19, you're 18 and lower. You can't be expected to be. You don't get the Rooneys and the Owens anymore that break through at that level. Players seem to take a little bit longer, but that's completely fine.
Yeah,
if they get there eventually.
Normally,
Rooney was dead by the time he was 28, wasn't he? He was done.
Yeah, that was it.
Out. He was done. He had 10 years in him, and that was it. Or probably a bit longer because he started a bit. But that's what can happen if players are starting too early.
Yeah, we'll see. There's no one in that under-19 side that are household names, but I know Ben Brereton from Nottingham Forest. He's been playing quite a lot there. He looks like a brutey centre forward. I don't know any of those midfield players, but I know Dujon Sterling's quite highly rated from Chelsea. I also know Trevor Chalabar's been on the bench for Chelsea, and Japhet Tanganga from Spurs is quite a lanky centre-half who's supposed to be reasonable as well. So I know a few in there, but it's interesting that there's no kind of household names. But then again, when you looked at the under-21, there probably wasn't a whole raft in there, and they went and won it. And I think something that's been interesting is a lot of the other countries are now saying that England have probably got technically some of the best players, producing some of the best young talent across the world now. And you look at, players like Jadon Sancho, Ademola Lookman and whatnot going to Germany. You recently had a Spurs forward, I can't remember his name now, which is embarrassing. He was snapped up by another foreign club. So, historically, the teams from England went abroad to Spain, Italy and whatnot. And, you get the Machedas and the Fabregazes. But I think now it seems to be the other way around, and our players are actually going to seek opportunities abroad, which is really interesting. And I think that will be good for the national team as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Playing abroad will widen their scope of play and different tactics and managers, and also just being in an environment that you're not initially comfortable with. You don't speak the language. You'll be a bit of fish out of water, but if you can overcome that, that's definitely going to be a positive. Also, we've got to say that England won the Under-17s World Cup as well. So surely out of those two, there's a World Cup winning squad coming through at some point.
And we won the Toulon tournament. So there's so many, good signs there. But again, do we then start hyping them up because they've won all this stuff, and then a bit of disappointment ends, and the cycle continues.
Yeah, that potentially can happen. The funny thing was, actually, I remember Boothroyd, obviously, was manager of the under-21s this summer when they took that Toulon Cup. He was planned to go to Russia with Gareth and that anyway, but he because of the way it panned out, he got 2 days at home and then had to go back out. So his family basically missed him for about 8 weeks. Came back because they won that tournament, and he was like, Christ, I'm back out there again. But yeah, there's positives there. Looking back at this England side, I mean, we know it wasn't the perfect tournament. We don't fault the effort, and we welcome the fresh kind of approach that was taken. There is this, it's a bit of a meme, it's a bit of a jab, it's that football banter. But you almost wanted to entertain this the other day in the Spurs players blowing it. Yeah. And I wanted to get your honest opinion on that, and whether you think it is just other fans that want to take a jab at Spurs, or is there something to this credence that them Spurs players can't be trusted in the big matches?
Well, let's say the large number of those players, but really it's Kane, Nally, Trippier, and
the stars. Some people are saying
they were. Yeah, you'd probably argue that Trippier, I think, was our top creator, and obviously Harry Kane was our top goal scorer, but then obviously you've got Rose and Dyer that can come in as well. So it does make me. It did for a moment. I can't remember where it was. I think we briefly said it in one of the groups, but I was like, is it that far fetched to suggest that Spursy mentality? It wouldn't. The thing is, I can't say anything other than the fact that it was very this England team, as I said to you before, do remind me of that Spurs side.
Don't say
but also, do they have that? It's the same with Spurs. You get to it, and I feel like I hope this England team doesn't get to that level where it's kind of like you're playing good football, you've got good players, you've got a good manager, you've got a good system, but for some reason you just cannot get over the edge and win a tournament and win some trophy. And that is a concern for this England side, is that if we do get to that point, we do have to win something, because if it's not like club football where you're operating on a budget or anything like that. You haven't got that luxury. But I think with the talent we're producing, you've got to question it. But yeah, it did just make me think about it. I was like, well, when you think about it, you've got Dyer, Rose, you've got Trippier, you've got Kane, Ali, and you could probably have one or two more in there. Really, it just makes you wonder. And we've had Ryan Mason up there. We've got Jake Livermore, a former Spurs player. The years gone by, and you just sort of go, right, is there too much of an influence? But look, I think it's sort of half joking. I think the Spurs players were, probably some of our key players in this squad, and still are, will be for years. So let's hope that doesn't come to be true. But I think in the same way that those Spurs players aren't far from winning something at club level, I think if they continue doing what they're doing, they'll win something at international level, or at least I hope they will.
Yeah, that's the hope, isn't it? If you were to look at the tournament from a whole, obviously there's people out there that will say easy group, easy run to the semis and perhaps finals. England have blown that. What do you say to those people? Have they got an argument when they lay out the facts like that, or is there, does it go back to that point where there's no divine right for this England team to be beating teams like that anymore, because they've not shown it in the past, they haven't shown it for years, in all honesty?
Well, I think Gareth was quite honest in what he said. He goes, we finished in the top four, but we're not a top four side. And he said, we got
10, didn't he mention?
Yeah, he said, we did get a favourable draw and we're top four, but he said, we're not a top, we know we've got some way to go. And I'd agree with that. We did get an easier draw. And the chances are, if we'd have got a harder draw, if we'd have got that Belgian draw, would we have gone out to Brazil? There is every chance that we would have gone out to Brazil. Brazil, you'd have to say, are a better side than England. So, in years gone by, you'd look at that England lineup, you look at that Brazil one, you go, well, we can get at them. And although with this England side, because it's so inexperienced, because it's young, the manager, all that kind of stuff, there wasn't that expectation. Everything was kind of a bit of a Brucey bonus. But the problem is when you do come up against probably sides that are in a similar tier, if you like, or a tier below, if you want, you sort of feel like that, we should be beating them. And Colombia, for all that they were criticised, they've got Yerry Mina at centre-back. They've got Davinson Sanchez, who play for top clubs. You've got Rodriguez, I know that was injured, but they've got Falcao, they've got Cuadrado. They've got very good players. So they're easy to be written off. And we did well to come through that tie. So ultimately, you've got to say that we're in the top. You'd probably have to say we're in the top 10 countries, really. I'd probably say we're around that sort of... But there's definitely, many sides that are in front of us at the moment.
Yeah, there's the way I see it is there is tiers. So there's maybe 4 tops international sides, and then from 4 to 10 there's another set of teams, and then from 10 to 17 it gets a bit wider the further you go down. And when you get into those same tiers, anyone can kind of beat anyone. And you just hope that when it comes to England, they beat the teams that are sort of in their tier, if you will, and then give the top sides a go and perhaps nick a win now and again.
Yeah, exactly. And just to highlight that point, I think when we come up against Germany in the friendlies and Spain, was it? We acquitted ourselves very well. We played fantastic football and we gave them both good games. And I think when we're doing that, you can't really ask any more from this side. But it's we're not in that top 4 or top 5 teams in the world. We're not up there with France, Brazil. You could probably, I know Italy didn't make it, but you'd probably argue that they're not far off still being that top tier side. Spain is still very good, so I'd put ourselves below them. But anyone else, I feel like it's game on.
Yeah, absolutely. What about this criticism there wasn't enough open play goals? It was all free kicks, it was penalties, it was corners, it was that business that England didn't score enough clear-cut open play goals. Is that a concern as perhaps something that needs to be addressed for future matches?
I think we need to find a way to be more creative. I definitely think that. I think we lacked a threat down the left-hand side. I think that much is key. I think we need to figure out how to stop getting Kane dropping so deep without runners. I mean, very rarely did I see Dele Alli running on beyond Harry Kane, which was really strange for me to see. He does that all the time for Spurs. So I think we need to figure out a way of creating more chances. It is a concern. I mean, it's really positive that we're such a threat from set pieces, but you need to be more creative from open play, and we need to get more service into Harry Kane, because I think he struggled for service. I really do.
Running off scraps.
Yeah, I think he was, and I think when you look at it, Raheem Sterling, for all that he does for us, you'd probably argue he wasn't as creative as he is for Man City. I just think the one thing that England side lack is someone that can get their foot on that ball, put their head up and pass it through and thread that key ball when it's really tight. When the team's really sitting back and we need that through ball, we lack that player that can do it. For everything that Dele Alli and Jesse Lingard are good at, you wouldn't say that they're, spectacular at finding a key pass or seeing that little, thing that's really difficult. I think, was it you that we were talking about, saying if we had Christian Eriksen in there, it's almost like a dream midfield, really, with Henderson there, one of Ali and Lingard, and then someone like him who can really see that key pass and put it on a sixpence. I think if we have that, we're not far off being where we need to be. It's just, I think in that it's just that little bit of creativity in the final third and seeing that pass that we're lacking. But there's players out there. It's just a case of, I think it'd have been very different if someone like Lallana was fit. I think we'd have played differently if Oxlade-Chamberlain was fit. So it's easy to say that we haven't got them players, but they just weren't there.
No, I agree. Those two could have been certainly offered a different option. I feel like sometimes as well, we just need to have a few more goes outside the box. Have a pop. We've seen that final where there's goals sort of just waffling in. You think, well, how's that got in?
Yeah.
And there's if you hit it and it goes near that corner, there's a chance that goalie ain't going to see it and it's going to end up in the back of the net.
It causes problems somewhere, or you get a corner or something out of it. Or do you know what I mean?
Harry fucking heads it in.
Well, yeah, there's a chance of doing something, but yeah, it's easy to be hypercritical. I don't think it's negative to say we did so much from set pieces, because I think it's really positive to see us doing that. But we need to find a way of breaking down tough teams and putting them under pressure. And I look at what Perisic was doing against us, and you just think, I really wish that we had that natural left-footed player. And Mourinho's right; he is quite a different sort of winger. He's really physically imposing. He's skillful. He's a threat in the air. He was a real problem. And when you're thinking, I want Raheem Sterling to cause problems like that. Or I mean, he's not going to cause problems in the air, but really get past people, really have a shot on him. And you just think, if we had someone like that that can just beat a man, whip a ball in and do something like that, we're laughing. But
is depth a concern then going forward, that outside of that 11 there ain't a lot of options potentially? But we've mentioned two players that could have changed it in Lallana and Ox if they were fit. So maybe it is there, it just wasn't available. The trouble is with a tournament, you're always going to get the odd couple of players that are injured and can't make it. But it's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is tough. And I don't think we've got any obvious candidates. I mean, when you get that first 11 now, there's not anyone obvious that you would say I'd put those in. I think, as I say, I think next season will be quite interesting. There are some young players out there. I've said to you before, Harry Vinks. I know I'm a Spurs fan, but genuinely that boy's got some talent. And there was people saying we need a player that can come on, keep the ball. Is really composed, turns it round. He's very good at that. He's a very good technical little player. So I'm hoping that he can have a big season at Spurs, and hopefully he'll be back in and around that England squad. It wasn't that long ago that he was dominating the midfield against Modric, playing against Real Madrid in the Champions League. So it's easy to forget about that, but he's been brilliant for Spurs since he come in from there. He's been unfortunate with injury, so he's one I think would be interesting to see. The Ox will be back. Lallana. I've been wondering about Lallana because I still get a feeling that Southgate wants to go with youth. I think he wants to build for the future, and he's probably looking at thinking Lallana's probably going to be pushing 33 for the next World Cup. Does he really want to keep him in there long term? Will he bring through the younger players that he's seen in under-20s and under-21s? Josh Onoma's had a good season at Aston Villa. Mason Mount has just had a good season in Holland. So there's players out there. It's just whether they can really take themselves to the next level and be involved with that England squad, I think.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see more of those faces during the Euro Nations and the UEFA Nations League, I should say. He's going to have to rotate because during that season, people are always picking up knocks and injuries, and you never get that. You never get the squad that you really want mid-season. Yeah. During these times, he's going to have to do something. You mentioned that you felt like obviously the Harry didn't score after the Sweden game. Actually, did he score in the Sweden game? No, he didn't, did he? He didn't score after the Colombia game, sorry. So the 3 games proceeded after that. I don't know if you count the Belgium game, although I would personally. It's still a match, and he obviously still wanted to score, but you alluded to maybe he was just knackered, absolutely out on his feet. And we just mentioned there's a concern for depth, but despite that, could Gareth have perhaps rotated the core player on the core squad a bit more so that some of these players weren't playing so much at the end, going through such a physical and mental draining match like Colombia, and then having to get up for Sweden and then Croatia after that? Yeah,
I think if you could be.
He said, didn't he? I'm going to need to use this squad.
Yeah.
Before the tournament, and I thought, we'll see changes after most games, but we didn't.
No, I mean, I think you've got to say that Harry Kane is up there with almost unreplaceable. I don't think you could, it's almost impossible. He's probably the best number 9 in the world. So whoever we put in is going to be on that sort of tier below. But I look at who he took, right? You've taken Vardy, you've taken Rashford, you've taken Welbeck. Why did you take Welbeck if you're looking at a game and you're not going to bring him on? I find that one weird. I don't really understand it. And the problem with Vardy and Rashford is they're very similar. They want to get in behind. They'll work hard. It's easy to be hypercritical of the squad, but you'd probably argue he maybe took either one too many centre-halves, one too many forwards, and didn't take enough attacking midfielders. And that is part of why I think he couldn't really rotate properly. I think he knew that if he took Harry Kane out, we lack a threat up front. And I think, if he took one of Ali or Lingard out, really, we kind of lack a goal threat from midfield. So it's really difficult, but it's easy to look back in hindsight. But I think he shouldn't have took Rose. He should have took Bertrand. I think he could have really rotated and put Bertrand in on the left-hand side. I think he's always been solid for England. I haven't got any complaints about him. And you could probably argue as well, should he have took Trent Alexander-Arnold if he's not going to play him, or did he just want to take him for experience? It's easy to be hypercritical, but when you look at, as I say, our depth, it's the players that come in really aren't up to the standard of that first 11, and that's ultimately what it boils down to.
Yeah. What about a player like Jack Wilshere? I mean, he's a bit of a crocker now and again, but he does offer sometimes that bit of creativity in the last third. Or do you think that was just too big a risk to? Did he need to take Phil Jones?
Well, this is the thing.
Really?
If you've got someone like a Delph who's pretty multifunctional, you've got a Dyer, you've got flexibility.
Dyer can play in that back three if he needs to.
If you absolutely need to, you can change that around. So as I say, he's taken Big Phil and Big Gal, and he's taken Phil as well. And
one of them doesn't need to be there, in my view.
That's
Phil,
the argument, But it's. I would have preferred him to take 3 forwards, considering we're basically using Raheem Sterling up front as well. We've basically taken 5 forwards to the World Cup, which seems excessive. I mean, even if 3 of those got injured, you've got 2 left. If 4 get injured, you've got 1. You can play 1 up top. Do you know what I mean? It's a really odd thing to do. I don't know, and I don't see Danny Welbeck personally. I think he's going to end up not rolling down the Premier League teams, but I don't see him getting a whole load of minutes at Arsenal. I can see him getting loaned out to a lower tier team going in the summer, and I think he'll start being phased out of that England squad now. I think he's done a good job for us generally, but I think we need to start looking forward a little bit. And Danny Welbeck is ultimately, you have to say, not good enough. I think that's the point we have to be at now. Is players like Danny Welbeck are not going to improve that side to the point where we're going to win a World Cup or win a European Championship. So I think that's where we need to look at it, those few little areas, and we need to make sure we have something different as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of our players were a little bit samey. So, as I say, another player we haven't talked about is John Joe Shelby.
Well, that bald eagle. But I mean, as I mentioned, Wilshere and John Joe's another one. You think they do offer something different at times, but they've got that problem where they're likely to bite and perhaps get sent off in that Colombia game. And also something that we spoke about at the very beginning and why we loved this squad so much throughout the summer. It was the harmony amongst the players. And you just wonder whether Wilshere or John Joe would have melded as well. And perhaps Gareth's seen them in and around the camp before and thought, you know what, there's other players that might not have that sort of X factor, but they're not going to play anyway, but at least they'll get behind the lads and won't be sitting there on the bench jealous or, anxious to get on. Obviously, they want to play, but I felt like even the players that didn't play were back in the team at all times. And sometimes you get that problem where players just want to play for themselves, and then they start getting discontent. Then when you bring them on, they don't perform. So maybe it's something like that that's a little bit more deep, which I think's a fair way to look at it, especially when you're going to a tournament for 5 or 6 weeks with 23 of you. You've all got to get on and get along with each other, and I felt that's one of the most impressive things about the team was the harmony between all players of all ages. So perhaps that's the option why the bald eagle and Wilshere were not there.
It's difficult.
We'll never know for sure, but
it's difficult because it's always, and this is the hard part with managing a national team, is that you don't necessarily have the luxury to choose those sort of things. And we haven't got huge amounts of quality in reserve. We're pretty lean on the squad that we've got. So can we afford to leave those qualities at home, if you like? I mean, if in that game against Croatia, for example, we're chasing it, or we're looking at that, we're going, if we've got no one to thread that ball, we look a bit uncomposed. If you look at the bench and you go, who have we got there? You think, oh, Jack Wilshere. And especially in that Croatia game where we're looking to ping balls over the top, if that's his tactic, John Joe's your man. So I don't know. And I think he has historically been a bit hot-headed. But I think generally he's been, especially the last part of last season, he was very mature for that Newcastle side. So, I mean, we'll see. There are players there, I think. I think it would be interesting to see what kind of season Jack Wilshere has at West Ham. I think that's a really important career move for him. It'll be, I think he's definitely going to get minutes there. And that West Ham team, from the signings they've made this summer, looks like it could be, a top eight side easily, especially with Pellegrini as well. So if he has a great season there, who knows? He could bring him back in, but we'll see.
Absolutely. The one thing that happens from now onwards is that this was kind of a bit of a free tournament for them, wasn't it? Like we said, the expectations were low. Unless they bombed out in that group stage, there weren't going to be many complaints. Had they gone out to Colombia, I think people would have been upset in penalties or whatever, but there would have been sympathy for them. But now they've kind of set that bar for themselves, and there is a minimum standard again. And the next fixtures will only get harder. So it'll be interesting, and I hope the lads and Gareth can navigate those waters, because we know it's a very fickle world, this football. I mean, we've probably flip-flopped more times than ever on these podcasts, going back and forwards. So it's just the nature of the sport that now there's a sniff that they could be good, and if they don't start performing, they're going to be right on his arse. And I just hope for the team's sake, I really do think we haven't spoke too much about Gareth himself. I really think he's very, very important for the next few years, and also he's important for any succession planning after him. I really think he's got his head screwed on and where he wants the national side to go and where it could be. And then, like I said, when his time's up, I'm hoping there's going to be a seamless transition almost of between managers. So the expectations are now there. It will get harder for them, but I think, a lot of them will thrive off that. Let's talk about just some of your top performers from the England side, and then we'll start closing it down.
Yeah, that's really, really tough. You'd probably have to say that Harry Maguire is probably my pick of the bunch.
You weren't sure about him to start with. I remember the first one, there were concerns, and I mentioned, I'd had him on FIFA, and he's a slug, but he proved to be a very good player in the end, and he was strong, he was solid, and he was confident on the ball. All right, he made a couple of errors there, here and there, but Stones and Walker were at it just as bad as him in that respect, and he probably looked the most assured out of all of them, in all honesty.
Yeah, this is where it becomes really difficult, because it's not to say that any of the others performed at a poor level. John Stones I thought was phenomenal, but I've kind of come to expect that from him. So weirdly, it's kind of like because some players surprised me, but I think Maguire was there. I think Pickford was fantastic for us. I think he was really important. And I have to say, Jordan Henderson, for the most part, was excellent in midfield, doing his job there. And then Raheem Sterling. I really think, he frustrates me beyond belief, because he does so much good. And then the one bit where you think just that final ball or that shot or that pass, just do that and that's perfect. And he unfortunately in this World Cup he just got it wrong. But the job that he does for England is really important, and he does it really well. And we always looked less of a threat without him on the side, and I think that says a lot. He got a lot of criticism coming up to and into the World Cup, and as I say, it's easy for people to go, "Oh, he's shit. He didn't score, or he didn't do this." But the job that he does for that team, stretching teams, running at people, and the fear that he puts into players, I think is really underestimated from a lot of people. I think he's a really key player for us. So, I think they probably go down as my key performers. But it feels a bit harsh not mentioning Trippier. But the problem is, I see him do that or play like that for Spurs, and it doesn't come as a surprise. It's expected. I know he puts in a ludicrously good cross. He always does it. But I suppose the one thing for Trippier is now that he seems to... One thing he didn't do for Spurs before, when he was coming into the side to replace Walker, he didn't beat a man. He was very much sure he didn't back himself to beat a man and whip a ball in. But he's starting to do that a lot more now. And he said in an interview that he sort of models himself a little bit, or he wants to be as good as crossing at Beckham. And you've probably got to, I find it hard to argue that we've had a better crosser of the ball in an England side since him than Trippier.
No.
I think he puts in a fantastic ball, and it was good to see him take a good corner and a good pen as well. So hopefully he can rotate with Eriksen next season and get rid of his shit corners.
Get him out. Not allowed. I'd say, I think I'd have to put Maguire on there, Trippier on there for sure, Henderson on there for sure. And then although Kane dropped off a little bit, but I really felt like he was a good captain and he led the line well. And in those early games, he led by example on the pitch. He was, that tier above player. And he got three penos and 2 headers or whatever it was, and one flicked off his heel. But he's won the Golden Boot at the end of the day. And you take it how you can. And he got tired towards the end, but I still think he had an awful lot to prove, and he proved a lot of doubters wrong. And being the captain comes with that added pressure. And I think he conducted himself brilliantly. He said all the right things in the interviews. It was good. It was good to see Harry Kane in that light, because a lot of people make fun of his dribbling voice and all that. But he was no longer will I do that, because in my eyes it's been a great tournament. He's a big part of that, but I'm always going to take the right backs and say Trippier, because that's the best position on the pitch. So Kieran just snips it off everyone. Yeah. Well, then that's it. That's it. The World Cup is over for 2018.
It's a bit sad, isn't it?
It is a bit because, like I said, I've really enjoyed this summer, and obviously England getting to the semi-final was a huge part of that. But before, maybe as a backup, before it even started, I was watching more games than I ever had, thinking, well, England won't get that far. I'll watch everything else, and actually, I watched more football than I have done in years. And one thing to come out of it is that I am done. I'm always on the brink of that club football. I hate honestly, I don't be liking the banter or whatever it is. Just divisive, toxic shit from people, morons spouting bollocks. I can't. And they know they are. They're listening. They're part of this. They're part of this dimp. I've heard it. I've seen it. Spouting bollocks, and then just unfounded hatred towards other clubs. I'm just like, I can't deal with that nonsense anymore. There's so much money at club football level now. It's a joke, isn't it? The amount of money that's being spent on players, on wages, on fucking agents. They're getting about 30 million a pop, these cunts. And I just can't. It really, I'm done. I've washed my hands of it if I get my way. And the great thing that this tournament has done for me is realise that international football is still the pinnacle for me anyway. It's still the purest form of football you can get. And that goes a long way into restoring my hope. And I think, that's why my priority is now always going to sit with England, and maybe the odd Southend game here and there just to put myself through that grinder. But in general, I've loved, being reinvigorated by international football. England doing well has had a big part of that, but just sitting down and watching it and watching how much it means to most of those players that play, where they're not getting paid oodles of money, and a lot of them give away their money to charities, their fees that they get given. So international football is back on the map, and I hope that the UEFA Nations League keeps it ticking over nicely until the qualifiers start properly, and then in 2 years we've got the Euros. So international football, nothing.
Yeah, I think it's probably worth mentioning actually that there was a lot of upsets in this World Cup, and I think one thing that international football historically probably could have been criticised for is being a bit predictable, and it's always the same sides that are there. But I thought it was refreshing to see one side of the draw where each team knew they had a chance of getting there.
Yeah,
and as I say, it was interesting to we're watching and thinking teams like Belgium. They're not really had a sniff before. They're lurking. You've got Croatia there, an unfancied Sweden side. There's Colombia, and I also thought it was
Russia nearly got to the semis. Lowest ranked team in the tournament.
Seeing
along with Saudi Arabia,
Italy didn't make it, Holland didn't make it there, Germany out. It was, there's some big scalps. So I think international football is kind of one thing that we said about the Premier League a few years ago was it's just utterly predictable, and now we're saying anyone can beat anyone, and it's a bit like that at international level. And I think coupled with that fact, it's become more entertaining to watch. And I think a lot of these games when I was watching them on the TV, you're sort of sitting there thinking it's anyone's game. They can upset them, and then a goal goes in. You go, oh, maybe it'll happen. So I think it was a really refreshing tournament. It was really well put on by Russia. All the football was generally pretty good, other than those Panama and Colombian bastards that wanted to play anti-football. But it was competitive, and as I say, I really enjoyed it, and it was quite depressing for me actually on Sunday. Going, well, that's it now. Yeah. And now I'm back to the fucking, as you say, the toxic shite on Sky Sports where they go, so-and-so's linked with so-and-so, so-and-so's going to buy so-and-so. And it's just that constant fucking drivel now, spouting bollocks for the next month until the Premier League season starts and that transfer window closes. One of the Spurs accounts I follow on Twitter, pretty much after that World Cup game, was like, did a tweet about Spurs transfer activity and the lack of it. And I just thought, what are we doing? Like, just really... Like, what the fuck am I doing? Get me back to that international football, and I haven't felt like that for a long time.
No, absolutely. Well done to the England squad, backroom, and Gareth. It was, it was great to rejuvenate and let us just think that it might happen. Just to have that thought for the first time in fuck knows how long was
30 years.
I know, it's the first time really. since being like an adult, you would say, because when you're a bit younger, you kind of, if they won it in '96, we'd have all remembered it, but I don't think it would have meant as much because you can't really comprehend the magnitude of it is. But as you get older, you put things into perspective, and then just them getting to the semi-finals is a great performance. But to have that dream and wake up and think, oh, they could get there, it's great to at least have that option, considering there's Iceland knocking England out before, and they're not even getting out of groups now, so who's gone backwards really? Anyway, thanks for joining me on this, Logan. It's been great to do this World Cup, Waffle of the World Cup, or whatever we end up calling it. I hope the listeners out there liked it. It was a change of pace for us. We'll continue doing things like this, I think. So look forward to other sporting things and other bits of pieces that we're interested in, not just video games. We're always going to branch out, and obviously if you want to listen to us on a regular basis, hit that subscribe button on whatever podcast app you're playing this on, and you'll be notified the next time an episode drops. Nothing more for us to say though, apart from well done Gareth Southgate in England, thanks for your time, and ta-da.